China's latest claims in the South China Sea present a challenge to the sovereignty of its neighbors from Vietnam to Malaysia. As we discussed in class, and according to our textbook, the concept of sovereignty is the right of a nation to do basically whatever it wants within its territory. It's a concept that was born out of war-torn Europe in the 30 Years' War, which makes it sort of unique for any claims on the other side of the world and in a totally new epic of history, but nonetheless, it's still relevant. The principal focus of our group's project was on the South China Sea and China's 9- and 10- map claims. Claims that include an area with vast fishing, natural resources, and militarily strategic locations. China's 10- map provides an opportunity to get a look in how modern China perceives itself. It's a map that originates out of Chinese Communist Party officials drawing with their hands out of the rubble of China in its own war-torn period. Among the states opposed to China's maps are the Philippines, who brought China to the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, where the court ruled unanimously in favor of the Philippines. The court actually declared China's claims as lawless and curtailing into the sovereignty of Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and the Philippines. But because it's a superpower, China can just ignore that. This is a wonderful example of the limits of international law, which we also talked about in class. International law is only as good as its enforceability. A painfully brief overview of China's recent history can inform us to its intentions, I think. China, more so than anybody, is the poster child for success in the period of globalization. It has enjoyed a meteoric economic rise and has reduced the vast majority of the world's poverty. This is because China opened up its markets after the death of Mao Zedong. And it was irresistible when China did this. The world was frothing at the mouth for access to China's markets and China's cheap labor, which made outsourcing that much more attractive. All of this was happening while China was also in the midst of coming after a period of intense revolution and transformation, a period that it refers to as the Century of Humiliation, which was also simultaneously the period of America's rise. America, fuck yeah! It's easy to see how this region is going to be highly volatile, how it has been and will continue to be. The Chinese entitlement to the South China Sea can be elucidated by its position in the world historically and its status. The majority of world history revolved around China. The ironic challenge for American leadership will be navigating our own primacy and China's memory, and paradoxically, its rising status again. In a secure location undisclosed to viewers, the American president and his prized diplomats consulted on options moving forward.
I'm recording. Yeah, there you are.
Here I am. Well, first off, why do we care?
I think that's a question of perhaps perspective. Taiwan produces about 70% of the world's semiconductors and about 92% of the world's total advanced chips. This is a massive bit of the market for the United States, who regularly engage in purchasing of automobiles, iPhones, things of that nature, and
Our military.
our military, exactly. And you kind of got a little taste of what life would be like without semiconductors during COVID. And in 2021 to 2022-ish, roughly, it was incredibly hard to get an automobile, a new automobile, strictly for the reason the semiconductors were not being produced in the same capacity that they were before COVID. And the economic effects that we felt of having less semiconductors during that time would be almost like a sniffle compared to the full flu attack that we would have if China were to aggress on Taiwan.
I have two questions on that. So, if Taiwan goes down, just got hard to buy cars for a couple of years?
No, not necessarily. It would be hard to buy everything. It'd be hard to buy iPhones, cars, microwaves, pretty much any kind of electronic device that you could think of. It would be hard to buy. But also, it would force the entire world into a global economic depression.
The whole world, China involved?
Yes.
But it would be way more than just cars, Mr. President. As you know, with your history in the Navy, modern military advantage is computing power. Us and China are in a chip war, more or less, to build
Technology
the best.
war in general.
Do we have any sort of alliance obligations?
No.
But
No, I don't.
For decades, when U.S.-China relations were a bit rosier, the policy was strategic ambiguity, which was not recognizing Taiwan as an independent entity, but still kind of treating it as one. And that was that for a couple of decades, especially when China was booming and it opened up to the world economically, until these more ambitious claims that China has laid out in the region, the 10-dash line, it's encircled Taiwan totally. It's clear that she feels entitled to it.
But one thing is for certain is that we are reaching a critical point, and China is becoming stronger in their economic prowess and militaristic power. And there definitely needs to be a decision made, Mr. President, and we'll go over potential avenues that we can take.
though a large percentage of world shipping passes through this region, huh?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that China could or would weaponize that? Because we are a largely import-heavy country.
Yes, our nation as well as
It would
our
hurt us,
allies.
especially.
It affects a third of all global commerce.
Right, President. I'm going to recommend that we seek to appease with the Chinese and continuing via diplomacy to seek to de-escalate the situation. We cannot afford a war with China. What do y'all think?
Basically, Mr. President, we need to commit to an increased naval presence in the South China Sea and really patrol the disputed waters in the region. As much as I respect Mr. Tucker's position, we simply cannot afford to maintain the status quo and effectively do nothing.
Yes.
Just do that.
I'll just concede that I think it's possible with the man-made islands that China has developed over the last decade that it might not be outright aggression. It might not be interpreted by the Chinese as that.
You think they might interpret it as aggressive behavior?
Not if we emphasize the illegitimacy of their claims.